Hello, Forceketeers, and welcome to another episode of Mando Night Football. I am your host, Ernie, and joining me tonight is Joel. Joel, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, Ernie. It's a great night. I'm alive, which is good. So
Your hair looks
it
beautiful as well.
is
Cheers.
amazing, and of course my beard. Just take a moment because, of course, I need to make sure that the beard's good. So I'm combing it right now as we speak. Just for all my fans. I think I have one or two. Good. Okay.
It's
Of my
like
beard, at least. Okay.
like Chewbacca shaved. And also joining us tonight is Chris. Chris from the cutout cardboard land. How you doing, my friend?
I'm also happy to report that I am indeed alive.
Oh, good.
I think,
Well,
at least. Last I checked.
nice. Well, tonight we do have a unique episode. Now, normally what we do here on Mando Night Football is cover all the Disney streaming service stuff that's provided on Disney Plus, but we have to get it out there. We have to talk about the Big Bang movie that just came out. As of today is the 20th. It has been a month since its release. So we're going to talk about Attack of the Clones.
Yes, I love that movie.
No, no, I will pass.
All right,
Glad
we're
I'll
gonna.
pass.
I'm just kidding. We're gonna be talking about the Rise of Skywalker. This is gonna be a fun conversation. I'm looking forward to one person's review on here, not yours, Joel.
Thank you.
Spoiler alert. But you know what? Let's start off by giving initial reactions to the movie without any spoilers first. Let's start off with you, Chris.
So, initial reactions. Me and my dad went to see this opening night, and I had unfortunately been kind of spoiled. I, I was expecting the leaks that came out to be wrong, which this started leaking like sometime in the summer. Unfortunately, they were all correct. There were a couple things that I did not expect that was going to happen, but for the most part, it was correct. My initial reaction after I left the theater was that I didn't know what I felt. I was very emotional. Mainly, it was a lot of reasons I was emotional, but mainly for the fact that it was going to be the last Star Wars movie for the foreseeable future. That we'll see, at least it involves these characters, because I don't think whatever comes out in like 2 years or 3 years or whatever it's going to be will involve Rey and Finn and Poe and all that. So I don't think that's going to be something that we should all look forward to, because I don't think it's going to happen. But yeah, I did not know what to feel after my first reaction or first viewing. I've seen the movie 2 more times, and I will elaborate more once we get to that. But my initial reaction was nervousness, and I felt very uneasy.
Okay. How about you, Joel?
Well, I walked out of the movie theater thinking to myself, that was decent. I felt a sense of completeness about the saga, about the 9 films. But I want to say emotional, but my brain was emotional with all the nostalgic value going on there, from the old generation to the new generation. But I thought to myself, that was Star Wars. I love Star Wars, but it wasn't a great movie. And it wasn't a great movie if you just walked in as a standalone movie. You needed to have the experience of at least the 8 other saga films to actually get what was going on. And then there was so much that you just missed because it wasn't explained or it happened too fast. My gut was like, hey, this is just like one of the rides at Disney parks, right? It's like Star Tours with the light speed skipping. You just strap yourself in, right? And then it turned into Rise of the Resistance. It's just one big Disney ride. So
Okay.
I got mixed feelings.
You got mixed feelings. Got it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to give mine a precursor here and say I think I was seeing mixed reactions from reviews, non-spoiler reviews on all the YouTube channels that I usually watch. And I just sat down and I told myself, and I even sent out a tweet. You guys can go check it out. But I basically said this. In 1999, a movie known as The Phantom Menace came out. When I walked out of that theater, I was in love with that movie. I loved that movie. Over the years, I've people's bitterness about the movie, specifically Gungan, would come out and they would just bash on this movie. But I couldn't understand why people weren't feeling the same things I was feeling. I think over the years, I finally started to get worn down about it and started to not like it. And trust me, when I first walked in that theater and started watching the movie, I noticed some inconsistencies in the movie of The Phantom Menace. I noticed it. The timing was off. It felt really weird, but I loved it. And so now, going forward, I didn't want anybody to change my mind. I knew what I was going to feel, and I wasn't going to let anybody tell me to feel differently. If I didn't like it, I didn't like it. If I liked it, I liked it. And I literally told myself, go in there and be a kid again. Just watch a movie that you love as a kid, like putting on the VCR, and just sit back and let this galaxy far, far away take you there. And so I loved it. I was really emotional about this movie. Do I think it's one of the better ones? No. But it was a fun adventure, and that's the way I'm always going to look at it as. And so I think moving forward from here on out, we are going to be talking spoilers. So if you have not watched the movie, shame on yourselves if you haven't, because it's been a month already. I've seen it 3 times. Joel's seen it twice. Chris, I think, twice? 3
times.
Yeah, so if you haven't watched the movie, shame on you. Go watch it. I mean, it just crossed $1 billion. So go watch it. But here's our spoilers moving forward.
Yeah, and if you're a kid from a future generation and you just tap into this podcast, go see the movie first, right? Okay, so because you want to see it with kids' eyes. That's
exactly.
That's a wise observation, Ernie, and I can agree with you more in the sense that it's Star Wars. It's supposed to be for kids, and sometimes the adults. It's hard to stop being an adult.
Yeah. I mean, that was the one thing since. We've become podcasters. I've become critical of movies, and I start looking for mistakes, things that I don't like in stories, weird acting moments, like direction of film, angle of the camera. Like I can go down the list because I've become somewhat of a internet critique.
Oh, I love the reflections. Try to see the reflections of the cameras in any glass on the set. It's little tricks like that. Oh yeah. It takes you right out of the story.
But yeah, it was one of those things where I had to remind myself why I fell in love with this movie. And, something Mike even brought up last week was that this will be somebody's first Star Wars. And one of my favorite YouTube personalities is on the Schmoes Know Entertainment Network. And he was seeing it through his daughter's eyes. He didn't like the film as much, but seeing his daughter light up, that made him love the movie. It's the experience. And I think even for me, the Force Awakens was an experience because it was the first time I took my wife to go see a Star Wars movie with me. She loved it. The next morning, we're talking theories. We were just staring at the ceiling talking, and that was an experience. But this, for me, was also an experience because I told myself to be a kid again.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I had a blast.
The second time I saw it, I was much more analytical, right? Because the nostalgia factor was lessened because it was my second time seeing it. And then my brain got going, and I'm doing all my film critiques in my brain. And why did they make that decision or this decision? It's a beautiful shot movie. It really is. My issues with it is more of how it relates to the sequel and the way the last 3 sequel movies went. And decisions made that covers all 3 films: The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, and of course this one, The Rise of Skywalker.
You know what? You do bring up a good point, Joel. There was a glaring elephant in the room with this saga, the 3 films that were just recently released. And the problem was they never had a linear story from the beginning, and that was never controlled. So it is a mess. I would even say even after The Last Jedi, it was already a mess. Like it just kind of didn't light up. I personally, I do blame Kathleen Kennedy for not setting the stone. And that's the thing about George Lucas as well, is that he had the story in his head already. He knew where it was going to go. The execution was the other problem, but he knew where he was going to go, even with the prequels. And so that was a glaring problem.
I just think with the sequels, they rely too much on tired Star Wars tropes. Instead of having a Death
Yeah.
Star, let's have the planet that explodes the solar system. Now every single Star Destroyer has the ability to destroy planets, right? I think tropes speak good, but they just went after it so hard. So what the story relied on in the sequels is nostalgia, new characters, which I quite like, and just the same old, Star Wars tropes, which they just try to increase the jeopardy of it. It's like, I'm simplifying. I understand that, but it's like, as someone who was a child seeing the original trilogy, it's like, I have perspective. It's like, I hope that this generation loves it because they should. But as an older fellow, I loved it, but I don't think it's a great trilogy. I don't think it's got great cinema in some ways.
The story writing, for sure.
Yeah.
Now, something did interesting happen. The guy who hates Star Wars, Chris, his emotions changed maybe after a night or two of thinking about this film. Chris, you ended up loving this film.
Oh, yeah. I saw the movie a second time, and this was probably, I saw it Thursday, the night that it came out, and then I waited an entire weekend. I didn't see it again until Christmas Day. And I saw it in IMAX, which, by the way, if you still have the chance to see this movie in IMAX, go do it. It's incredible. I left the theater so giddy, so excited. I had a blast with it. It was nice to know everything that was going to come ahead and not have to worry about, am I going to like what they do with Kylo, or am I going to like what they do with the Rey, or is there going to be any cameos or fans? What's all this fan service about? Like, it was great just to be able to sit back and enjoy the movie. And it reminded me of the same way that I felt when I saw The Phantom Menace in theaters in 3D back in, I think that was like 2011, 2012. I saw that movie for the first time really, I loved it as a kid, but it never really struck a chord with me as even a teenager or an adult. But then I saw it from the perspective of I was probably 19 or so at the time, and it was great. And I saw these kids around me just loving it, loving Jar Jar, loving the pod race, hiding their eyes when the lightsaber battle came on because it was scary. And that's exactly how I felt in 1999 when I saw it in the theater. And this is the same way with The Rise of Skywalker. Yes, it has crazy bad story decisions, which it's not really the fault of J.J. Abrams or Chris Terrio, but mainly the Rian Johnson, and then also J.J. and The Force Awakens sort of didn't help himself out. And then you mentioned earlier, Ernie, about not having a story. I will gladly support anybody that does not like the movie because of story reasons. But from start to finish, just strictly the 2.5 hours, it has its problems and it has some plot holes, but it's fun. It's a nice. It's probably not what I would have written if I had to do something post Last Jedi. It's not where I would have liked some of the characters to go or moments to happen, but it was fun, and that's what Star Wars should be. I think so many of these people, you sort of see all of these reviewers and these critics and these YouTube personalities and even us podcasters. We're all adults, and for the most part, we are at the very least mid 20 somethings. A lot of people in their 30s or their 40s or 50s or what have you that are fans of these movies, driving the conversation. You don't get the kids, you don't get the young teens, you don't even get any of the old teens, because even though that's the ones that the movies is for, we're the ones that drive the conversations, and sometimes that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
I can certainly say I'm in my mid-40s. New films nowadays, it's the pacing. That's what I don't particularly like about the sequels. It's just such a quick pace. I like the slow pace. I like the pace of The New Hope. I know it's strange. It's from 1977, so it's a 70s film. I think Empire was better because it picked up the pacing somewhat. But this one is just like a big video game. That's pros and cons. Yeah.
Hey, Chris did bring up something I do want to elaborate myself. Since I did love this movie, that doesn't go without saying that this movie had issues. This movie had so many issues.
Yeah,
I mean,
but Ernie, it had Ewoks, so that made me happy.
can't go wrong with Ewoks.
Exactly.
So I can agree with a lot of things that people are saying out there. I can agree with a lot of feelings that they didn't like something in this movie, because I think in certain aspects I didn't like it either. But it was, I just let it go. I just let it go and just enjoyed what the film gave me. And I do want to hit on the point of how the first hour of that movie felt to me. It felt like a fast treasure hunting adventure to me.
Yes.
I mean, just from the moment when they jump onto the speeders and they're going through the desert, that scene was so much fun. It is hokey in the grand scheme of things, right? If you pull back the veil of Star Wars and just look at it as some weird space age movie that like is moving through fantasy, it's a bit hokey. But during the moment, it was fun.
Yeah, it was.
I had a lot of fun watching this moment. So there's a lot of things like that kind of stood out to me. Like even when she finds the dagger and like holds it up, it felt very,
the Goonie
it felt very, it felt like Goonies. It felt like Indiana Jones. It felt like we were Tomb Raiders. You know what I mean? But it was just a lot of fun. Like, and I felt like the pacing of the movie for sure was just out of control, a bit insane. And it's almost like in The Crawl, J.J. Abrams, and I've heard somebody else say this, like, strap in, we're moving.
Yeah. What I think, like, this is not my take. I kind of tweaked it. But if you look at the new ride at Disneyland and Disney World, Rise of Resistance, right? It's the best ride ever. But they really try to up the jeopardy, up the stakes, make it fast, right? Make it cool, which is cool, right? Yeah. Okay. But you look at it, they just took the plot from The New Hope, and you add all the new characters, essentially. Yeah, a few differences, right? But that's essentially the way the ride's narrative progresses throughout. And then, of course, they have to one-up themselves, so they put a drop at the end of the ride. Right. Why? Because that's what the newer generation wants. That's what kids want. They wanted that because they don't want the same ride that the parents or the grandparents saw. They want their own version they can match upon. So that's why I would say Star Wars is generational, and the older folks needs to understand that it is for kids, and kids eventually grow up to be adults and people like myself. So,
well, I think that's why the sequels will go down really as being sort of personally, I think it's just as a whole, it's a massive missed opportunity. If you would have told me back in 2015 when we would see The Force Awakens that I would finish or go into the year 2020 being sort of let down by the sequel trilogy, I would have been very surprised with you. I think that right now we're seeing a lot of fans of Star Wars be in charge of things, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, because I remember seeing J.J. Abrams talk about, even as far back as Celebration Anaheim in 2015, that he understood Star Wars and that he was surrounding himself with people that understood Star Wars, and he's been a fan since he was a kid, which that's fine. But there's a difference in being a fan and understanding what makes a Star Wars movie, and being a fan and just writing what you like about Star Wars. And I think that's the problem that we're seeing with a lot of the things in current mainstream Star Wars media, even The Mandalorian. Like, I mean, when you ask an older fan, or even really anybody that's like in their late 20s and up that grew up with Star Wars in some way, you either think about Boba Fett or Clone Troopers or or like those cool looking characters. And that's why we have The Mandalorian. I guarantee you that's why we have it, is because it's based on an already established like thing that the general fandom thinks looks cool and will sell money and will at least get people talking. And I think that's what happened with the sequel trilogy too. Like, you had all these people that went with their gut and said, okay, let's just tell the story that we think should be told because we're the people that grew up with the originals.
Yeah.
Well, what about the people that grew up with the prequels? Or, if we're going to continue this movie, like at least tie it into everything that came before. Don't sort of like spin your wheels and then get to the last one and try to figure out how you want to tie it up. Or better yet, don't get to the next to the last episode and decide that you want to do something different with the saga. Like do that in a Rogue One or in a Solo.
Yeah, I think economics definitely drove the sequels in the direction they took.
Yes.
And I don't say cashing in, but using nostalgia of older fans or established characters that's been around for 42 years and use that. And it worked. I thought the Force Awakens was a nice balance. And I was looking for number 8, number 9 to get away from the original characters. And they didn't do that. They incorporated them in.
Well, I think too the issue was since the beginning, it was I think always planned to be the end of the Skywalker saga, and I think the issue that happened that nobody saw coming was the death of Carrie Fisher. I don't think this third movie would have been the same way it is now had Carrie survived, and I think that because like each story was supposed to close out the 3 main characters that we know of. We had Han Solo in The Force Awakens have his moment, Luke have his moment in The Last Jedi, and then, Carrie was supposed to have her moment in this one. And you know what? Like, let's talk about the Carrie Fisher scenes as well while we're at it. You could tell that the footage was manipulated. I think J.J. Abrams, with what he had, did a great job, though.
I agree.
Yes.
He just had leftover footage, and he used it for the moments that drove the story, but also kept our beloved princess in general in this movie because she's incredibly important to even Rey's development.
Right. Yes. Not only Rey's development, look what she did in this movie. She saved her son, redeems her son by killing the son. Mm-hmm. What moral conviction, what moral courage, what love.
What faith in the Force, Yeah. You know what? I got to tell you guys, like, I got really emotional the moment that Rey said master, called her master, because that, for me, since I was a kid and reading some of the books, we always try to expand our knowledge when it came to Star Wars, for me being a sequel, no, the original saga, we always try to expand our knowledge by reading these books, and sometimes the stories didn't match. But one of those things that we always wanted to see was Leia use the Force. And in some ways, I think the idea of her using it in The Last Jedi was good. I don't like the execution of it. But seeing her train Rey and knowing that she had this knowledge and the storyline that they used, that she foresaw her future and why she gave it up. But I just loved the fact that Rey got to call her master. That was an incredibly emotional moment for me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I really like how they did Carrie in this movie. And, maybe, parts of me thinks that maybe a couple scenes could have been not CG, but, use some like filming or camera tricks to make us think that it's Carrie there when it's not really, which they probably did, and we just don't know about it. For example, like the scene where she's like laying down on the table to essentially use the last bit of her life and reach out to Kylo/Ben. I think that was like probably a body double of some kind. And then obviously she was not under the sheet, but I don't know. Maybe you could have added a couple more scenes. It would have been nice to see in that regard. But with what they had, I think it's worked fine. It did feel a little weird because I had seen the deleted scenes before. So like the one about the droid, like I think that's on the Force Awakens Blu-ray. And then obviously the part where she hugs Rey, I mean, that's an alternate take from the end of Force Awakens. So it did look a little strange, especially on the big screen. IMAX especially. Like you could tell that that she was not physically there when they were filming all of this. But given the alternative, which would have been a fully CGI character with somebody voicing her, or her not be in the movie at all, I'd rather have this.
Yes,
I'd rather have her than not, be in it in some regard than not at all. And I think her ultimate conclusion and the way that she eventually redeemed Ben, she is the one that redeemed Ben. Han Solo couldn't do it. He tried, and it was up to Leia to do it, and that's exactly what she did.
She also redeemed Rey. You got to throw that in there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I think that... Or go ahead, Joel.
Yeah, just to talk about Carrie Fisher, I believe her daughter, Billie Lourd, stood in for a lot of the scenes. So,
yes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's that family connection going on as well.
Yeah, she also did the... she's the one that's in the scene with when Leia is fighting Luke in training, in the flashback. That is Billie Lourd playing her. They just took some facial recognition from I think Return of the Jedi to put that onto her face and digitally alter it. But yeah, I think that you're right, Ernie, about redeeming Rey. That's something I sort of had thought about it, but I didn't look at it in that regard. You can see on the Death Star that Rey was the closest that she was ever going to turn into the dark version of herself.
Yeah,
and it's obvious.
Well, even the scene with Luke, where Luke said, "Because you're a Palpatine," and Rey finally realizing she still trained me, even though I'm a Palpatine. That to me was that the love of that woman, spread around the galaxy and saved the lives not only her son but her adopted daughter, basically. Mm-hmm. And I just thought that was so beautiful.
And too, having it be something that that Carrie Fisher would appreciate makes it even better, because if Carrie was here and let's say she was still alive, but for whatever reason couldn't commit to the movie or whatever, but she still had input into what her character would do, I think that's the way that it would have went down.
Yeah, totally. And I felt like it was a really respectful way of dealing with it. We all knew, and I wonder how we would feel if we didn't know. Obviously, we're gonna know. She passed away. It's big news to Star Wars fans, but I really do wonder if we didn't. I wonder what our mindset would be, if we would catch the nuances, especially the scene with Snap Wexley. That scene stuck out to me like a sore thumb. Oh, this is so bad. But it was still kind of funny. You know what I mean? We're try to be optimistic.
Well, I think people would have viewed it the same way they did Tarkin. I mean, I can vouch and say that there are people probably still that have seen Rogue One multiple times, or maybe even just once, and had no idea that Peter Cushing's been dead for years.
He's like a vampire.
I got my Rogue One mug right now. So.
Yeah, Peter Cushing must be a vampire or something. Okay. A nice mug, by the way, Ernie. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, we are doing video, just to say, and we're just testing things out. So if you're listening to the podcast by audio, we're trying not to make that many visual jokes, but it's hard not to do.
Check out the visual of my mug.
I will say, I was just, this movie surprised me, because I did not, I had an expectation that I would at least enjoy it in some regard, but I didn't think that it would be near the top of my rankings. I do think that this is, it's around 4 or 5 in my rankings. I think I tweeted this not too long ago. I would say it's probably around 5. Give or take a few, depending on my mood.
What's weird is that apparently the leaked script came out also for Colin Trevorrow's version.
Oh yeah, did you guys read that?
Not yet. I have it as one of those things I must read that script and just decide for myself. Apparently, for I guess the Disney execs, it was too inside baseball.
It was very. This would be a good plot for a video game. If you had to make Episode 9 a video game, it would be this, because it's too. I think it's too hardcore for the casual fans. It's still like okay. It has its moments. It has some really cool things too. But yeah, you'll have to tell me what you think whenever you.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to read it just to kind of, because I've always been intrigued with Colin Trevorrow's version of this, and because on Jedi Council, which rest in peace, Collider just ended that show. I don't know why. Pisses me off. But Bobby Moynihan was on there. I believe it was Bobby Moynihan, and he said that he was at a Star Wars party at, this when The Force Awakens came out and they were on SNL. Daisy Ridley walked up to Colin Trevorrow and said, "Where's my character going to go?" And he's like, "You really want to know now?" And apparently they walked off into a corner and were talking. And at the end of the talk, he could see that Daisy Ridley was in tears because of her character, like what happens to her character. So I've always been intrigued since then. I've always been bummed out that they fired him. But here we are, you know what I mean? Which brings up a question I have for you guys. And it's kind of been the hot topic, I believe, for this movie. Do you guys believe that J.J. Abrams shut out Rian Johnson's story in order to proceed with his?
I think JJ dialed the story down. You talk about the democratization of the Force. Can anyone use the Force, right? Now,
Right.
with JJ, you still have the story with the Palpatines and Skywalkers. So, yes and no. But the common person still can have the Force, because you see, what's his name? God, I'm having a brain fart right
Finn.
now. Finn, thank you, Finn. Like he's using the Force. At least he's showing indications that he's Force sensitive. That's amazing. Now, this is a deserter stormtrooper from the First Order, right? So yes, the Force is for everyone, because it's in all living bodies, right? Human creatures, but some living creatures are more powerful than others, apparently. That's my take on it.
I think JJ took the best parts of The Last Jedi and improved upon them, and makes my ultimate goal for Rise of Skywalker was to make Last Jedi better in my eyes, and I think that JJ did that. I do think that there were some things he ignored, such as I think he sort of redeemed Luke a little bit by saying, little jabs like respect the lightsaber, or whatever the line was. Rose having a backseat really did.
She got Jar Jar Binks.
Yeah, I liked Rose personally.
Yeah.
I think Ryan sort of wrote her into a hole, just making her sort of like the not the damsel in distress, but just the typical like love interest for Finn, or just a love triangle for him and Rey, if that was ever going to be the case. But I mean, JJ took the Force dyad, which who knows if that's what Ryan was thinking about, and made it one of the coolest things of the entire 9-film Star Wars saga. I love the idea of the Star Wars dyad or the Force dyad with Rey and Kylo, because it explains why she's so powerful in The Force Awakens. It explains why she's powerful in The Last Jedi, and it explains obviously why she's powerful in Rise of Skywalker. And the fact that he was able to improve upon that is exactly what I was hoping for. And he did it in a way that I was not expecting. And I think made, again, one of the coolest parts of the entire saga.
And
So yeah, I do think that I don't think he went story-wise with the direction that Ryan was going. But to be fair, I don't even know where Ryan was going with that. Like, at least with the other Star Wars movies, like Empire Strikes Back, you sort of have an idea, well, where we're going with Return of the Jedi. It's like, well, we have to go rescue Han, and we have to have Luke probably fight Vader again. Like, at least we know that. With Last Jedi, we know nothing.
Yeah. And see, I'm actually on that same boat. I don't think JJ shut out Rian Johnson's story at all. I hear that argument, and I think I can respect it. I just don't know why people keep turning it. Sorry?
I think it's there in a couple ways, but it's not like he totally retconned the movie.
So here's my point, though. I was going to say Rian Johnson wrote the story that he wanted to write. And you can say that JJ with The Force Awakens started a foundation, and Rian Johnson took pieces of that foundation and built another hut, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing here with JJ writing the third movie. They each wrote the movie that they wanted to write. It wasn't a competition, and I hate that everybody has turned it into this competition. Or, the line I heard was that JJ took all his toys back. I don't believe that at all, and I believe that, like, if JJ actually had some sort of animosity or some feelings about The Last Jedi, he hated that movie, I don't think he would have used any of Rian Johnson's storyline at all. In fact, I feel like he used the key moment, and using the Force Skype call, so to speak, that was such an incredible moment in this movie, and that's something that Rian Johnson built upon. Why use something so prevalent in a movie if you didn't like the film? So for me, I don't think it should be a competition. I don't think we should look at it as like, well, he just didn't like the Last Jedi and wrote his own story. Well, you could essentially argue that The Last Jedi was the same thing, that Rian Johnson wrote the story that he wanted to write. Same with JJ in this last movie. And I would even, Chris, I know I've said this to you years ago, but when The Last Jedi came out, my argument with The Last Jedi was that didn't feel like a middle of the movie of 3 films.
Yep.
That felt like an end. And I really do feel like, oh man, how are you supposed to build upon when you don't have anything to build upon? Like, it was like, where the hell are you going to go with this story? So I think that argument for me doesn't hold water. It doesn't.
It felt like Episode 3, Last Jedi did, in the regards of the fact of, okay, well, we saw Anakin fall to the dark side and become Darth Vader, but he survives. And then what happens to Obi-Wan? What about his kids? Like, it's a cliffhanger, and obviously there's going to be a 4, 5, and 6 after it, and a whole bunch of stories in the middle. But okay, you're telling me this is the penultimate episode of a 9-film saga? Like, where are we supposed to go with this? What did you guys? Or go ahead, Joel.
I just think that The Last Jedi was very subversive in terms of societal norms happening in our real life, as well as Star Wars tropes. Really, Rian Johnson really went after that. It's almost like on purpose he was getting to the diehard Star Wars fans' face to say, hey, you need to change the way you're thinking. It's not working. And with the new one, with the Rise of Skywalker, we didn't see that. The dial was switched all the way over to nostalgia.
Yeah.
So, which is fun to do when you're maybe doing an episode 2 or a 3 of a 9-film saga, not an episode 8 of something that's already existed for 40 plus years.
Well, all the knives out tonight. I can see that. So.
Well, here's the thing, though. I think, and honestly, I don't feel like this movie has brought such a negative cloud as The Last Jedi did. I do feel like he did improve that part of the fandom a little bit. I don't see as many arguments as I did, or even poisonous ones for that matter, with this movie. I see that people say they don't like it and they move on. Yeah, there's the assholes out there that still will argue this point, and that Disney took away their saga. No, they didn't. You could just put on the Blu-ray. You can go to your Disney Plus account, put on the movie that you want to watch, and choose the film that you want to watch. If you want to watch Rogue One, go ahead. If you want to watch A New Hope, go ahead. Now we have so many choices, and animated, the Freemakers series, it's there. We have Star Wars all over the place. Enjoy the one that you want to enjoy.
What did you guys think about bringing Palpatine back? And how do you think that was executed?
I don't think it was executed well, to be honest. I did like the camera angles that they used for Palpatine. I like the idea of Palpatine coming back. I just don't think it was executed well. I felt like it was really sloppy.
Yeah.
Just the kind of, he's already there. That whole thing. I think the marketing for this movie was a little weird, that they put the message out that Palpatine had been sending out into the universe on Fortnite. What out of all the things you put it on, why not put it on the YouTube channel of Star Wars or in the Star Wars app? Like, why did it have to be on that stupid game? I'm sorry, I don't like it. If you like
money.
it, that's fine.
It was money. That's the reason why. Okay.
But I do think it was sloppy. There was, while I don't need you to full on give me an encyclopedia on Palpatine and how he returned, I don't need that, but I do need some sort of explanation. And there's a lot of plot holes with that.
Yeah.
I agree with you, Ernie. I like explanation. I like understanding how things happen. But I must say, I think it was a great idea to bring Palpatine back in terms of story. And how they announced that at Star Wars Celebration Chicago, like I was in the room.
That was great.
That was just the laugh. Oh, it's like, oh my God.
I get it.
And just like, you want to get fans to talk and never stop talking? That's how you do it. I wish they would have provided more explanation in the film, which is very, it's kind of the opposite. Like we always say, don't explain how the Force works. What this midichlorian business? I don't want to hear that. You're a scientific my fantasy story up. Stop doing this. But now it's kind of the opposite. Okay, so he's into dark arts and he looks like a vampire and he has this whole Sith cult thing going on, and that's cool. But I want more explanation. So I don't know.
He's the greatest villain in the Star Wars universe. He is. The manipulation that guy spews out of his mouth in the prequels is nothing short of amazing. If you really pay attention to his nuances when he speaks, he'll put you down if you're not responding to him. He'll also threaten you with fear. All the ways he gets you to fall to the dark side, I saw in this movie, but it doesn't matter if you don't explain how he's returned. For me.
Yeah.
The question I have is Rey's parents or Palpatine's son, right? Is that a clone? Is it a science experiment? Or did he have relationships with women?
I heard the best argument on this.
So many. It's like, he can't have a relationship with women. You mean people are into relationships and they're fake to each other? Happens all the time.
Here's the best argument I heard about this. Palpatine was the Emperor. He was the leader of the galaxy. Even before that, he was part of the Senate. That guy had power. How can that guy not roll in chicks if he had that much power?
Absolutely. Yeah.
He had a son somewhere, so.
I sort of view the return of Palpatine in a different way than most people. To me, this is the way that I just choose to interpret the film, even though I don't think that it's supposed to be that way. I'm really curious about the novel, by the way, to see how it's fleshed out. I've already have it pre-ordered, which I know is weird because I don't read Star Wars books.
Don't.
But the way that I interpret it is not necessarily Palpatine returning, but the Sith returning. If this was me writing the story, making a few tweaks, first of all, I wouldn't make Rey a Palpatine. I don't think she's best to be like just a random girl. I think it's best to her be in some way related to something, like be one of Luke's students that he sent off because he saw potential in her or something, just to make her relevant. But if it was me, I would have written it to be where it's not necessarily Palpatine being back. It's Kylo, now that he's like the supreme leader and Snoke is gone and all that, he tries to like not resurrect Palpatine, but bring back the Sith as a whole. And then, or he does something inadvertently or not that brings back the Sith in the form of Palpatine, who at this time, at least to like the Skywalker saga, is the most evil person to ever exist. Like, we know that there's other Sith way in the past, but right now we just only care about Palpatine.
Right.
I would have made it to where it's more about the Sith rather than more about Palpatine coming back. It just it manifests in the form of Palpatine, which would have been cool to have him be like half of the movie is like a manifestation of the Sith, just sort of like how Rey at the end was a manifestation of the Jedi. Like, she was all but dead, and then who knows if she didn't speak to the Jedi, like they could have like given her, somehow transferred some of their life from the Force to her just to give enough to like defeat him, and then she dies, which would have been a great, I don't know, sort of circle, given that one of Anakin's goals was to save Padme from dying. So you could have written something to how where he wasn't able to save Padme, he wasn't even able to save himself, but he was able to save Rey.
It's interesting, that take, Chris, but I like the fact that the Sith never went away. They were just manipulating things from the shadows, because that's the true evil, right? That's the true evil in any society. It's like the people who are pulling the strings, people who are manipulating for their own ends, self-serving ends. And Palpatine was the master. Like, even common usage, if you use to describe a politician that's self-serving and manipulating, you call the person Palpatine, right? Or the Emperor, right? And because everyone in society knows this, at least in the West. That's my take. I think Palpatine's one kick-ass villain because he's so insidious.
His powers at the end were pretty fucking cool.
Oh, yeah.
The problem with that, though, is that it's not, and this is one criticism I give to Palpatine coming back, is that it's not foreshadowed in episode 7 or 8.
Yeah.
Like, you could use 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes, which don't get me started on the whole extended cut thing. I would love to see it. That movie could use so much more. Make it just like 3.5, 4 hours. I don't care. But it could have used just an extra few minutes to, I don't know, even if you have to retcon something that was not supposed to be intended, like show some scenes from The Force Awakens or Last Jedi that like say, hey, whenever you go back and look at that, view it from this angle and show that Palpatine was returning, even though it's probably wasn't intended for that to be. I know it wasn't intended to be because it was never the plan to bring Palpatine back. But yeah, there's so many different ways you could view this movie and this trilogy, but to me, it doesn't take away the fact that it was fun. Just like the prequel trilogy. It's not my favorite trilogy, even though The Phantom Menace is the second best Star Wars saga movie. Fight me. But it's still fun, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, exactly. Accept what you've been given and do with it what you want. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I am going to push this conversation a little faster now. But there's one little minor thing I want to bring up here really quick, and then I want to start breaking down some of the characters and their stories and where they ended up. But Chris, this one's for you. What did you think of the soundtrack?
I've only listened to it once. First impression in the first initial viewing was I didn't really notice it, which is not a good thing when it comes to Star Wars scores. Second and third, it stood out a lot more. I think the complete score is great. It means John Williams. It's going to be great. I think The Last Jedi is probably one of his best scores for Star Wars. I don't think the soundtrack itself is very good. It's never the complete score, which always bums me out. Hopefully we'll get that at some point in the future. But it has it has some really cool moments, but it's not something that I'm going to buy and listen to over and over in the car. Rogue One was, even though it's not John Williams, was one that I would buy and listen to over and over. Episode 3 was one that I would buy and listen to over and over. It was a great actual CD soundtrack. Rise of Skywalker, not so much.
Oh, see, like I had the opposite reaction. I thought the soundtrack was great. The play on the old themes, he used them in the perfect moments in the movie. So I downloaded the soundtrack, I think, the day of I went to go see it. I think it was released on a Friday, if I'm not mistaken. And then, I went to the movies and I noticed some of the themes popping out in certain aspects of the movie. And I thought it was beautiful. The end crawl or the credits, I've played that song on blast so many times since I purchased the soundtrack. But I still feel like the Force Awakens had the better soundtrack just because we were gifted. Yes, I'm using the word gifted. One of the best themes of all time, and I think Rey's theme was so beautiful and written so perfectly, and that even the X-wing theme for the Resistance, Kylo's theme, all that stuff came out of the Force Awakens. But this soundtrack was beautiful. It was so beautiful. I do recommend you purchase it and listen to it because, it sends you back. It makes me feel like I'm back in that movie theater seat eating some popcorn. Some popcorn I probably shouldn't speak about. It was like Cheetos popcorn, but it was delicious. But yeah, Joel, did you have any thoughts on the soundtrack?
I think it served its purpose in all three movies. I just saw the Rise of Skywalker again 2 days ago, and what I really noticed is that with the visuals, with the cinematography, beautiful shots, and the music, these are essential Star Wars elements. That's 90% of the story right there, which as a viewer, you understand what's going on because of these elements. The plot, yeah, we've talked about the plot to death. But without without the soundtrack, this movie would not work whatsoever. It's the music that actually glues everything together, in my opinion.
Okay, so there's a song called "Reunion," which is the last song they play when the Resistance lands back on base after destroying the Sith, Star Destroyers, and the theme of Star Wars starts to play. And I think it's just so great. I start to giggle every time I hear it. But yeah, I thought it was a pretty good soundtrack. Now let's start moving on to some of the characters because I feel like this is an important part of the new trilogy. How did you guys feel about the main three, being Finn, Rey, and Poe? And
which we would have had it in Last Jedi.
Yeah.
That's my thoughts.
Yeah, I think giving Poe a backstory in terms of a bit of a criminal, shady past was interesting because it speaks to his character because he's a bit of a jerk. Just a bit, right? And he's a hothead.
It's cocky jerk.
He's learning. So it's kind of like a Han Solo light, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I like that.
Han Solo 2.0.
Yeah, exactly. Finn, I thought Finn's actually quite an interesting character because he's like one track. Like he's changing. He makes decisions, but it's not like this guy wants to run for the Senate. He doesn't know what he wants.
Yeah.
He just doesn't. He knows what he doesn't want. And Rey is the Skywalker of the sequels.
What about you, Chris?
I just wish that we would have had the trio more in this saga or in this trilogy. Rey is just completely surprised me. I had a feeling about her from The Force Awakens that I would like her, but she's probably one of my favorite Star Wars characters now. Finn, I loved Finn's role in this movie. I know a lot of people, John Boyega probably himself, didn't necessarily like his portrayal in Last Jedi. Same with Poe and Oscar Isaac, but he was great. It just makes me want to see him come back with Daisy Ridley and them start like a Jedi Order together because he's Force sensitive, and then Poe. I mean, I always liked Poe as well. Was not a fan of how he was in Last Jedi, but he definitely redeemed himself here. Sort of had my only problem with Poe is that, and I've heard other people talk about this as well, is that his arc sort of doesn't make a lot of sense, and it jumps around a lot from the first time he was introduced in whatever comic that was, to The Force Awakens, to Last Jedi, to now Rise of Skywalker. Like, it just jumps around a lot, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But I mean, that's the sequel trilogy for you, so you sort of just have to accept it. But I want to see more of them. Unfortunately, I don't think that we will see another movie, or maybe another movie, but I don't think a set of movies with these three in it. I think Oscar Isaac is done with Star Wars. I think he's the Harrison Ford of this. Will only be brought back for one movie. But I do think that John Boyega will come around, and I think Daisy Ridley is up for it as well.
So you brought up an interesting point, and I feel like a lot of people loved the trio. I loved them on screen together because the banter was there. They were really funny. I do like that Poe became a bit more confident and had his struggles in this movie. So I do feel like when a character's development, and this is still my issue with Rogue One. I love that movie, but the character development in that movie is terrible. It is terrible. I feel nothing for when the blast comes and they die. Like, I don't feel anything for those characters. I feel more for the two other guys that were in there. But for this, like, I like that he has his struggles. That he lacks self-confidence at the end, like, and he has to take this responsibility of leading his troops into battle, and they're losing. They're about to lose. They're about to be destroyed, essentially. And I like that he had his moments, and I do feel like his story did bounce around a lot in the trilogy. Now Finn, I feel like Finn was the heart of this movie. Finn was the glue, because and it was funny to watch. The banter between Rey and Poe was hilarious, but they bumped heads. And they both had different philosophies on how to fight the battle, or even the war, essentially. But Finn was always the one there. Even at the hug at the end, they were hugging. Finn was in the middle. He was the one grabbing the two of them, and I just thought it was beautiful. So, watching his story, I like the idea of a turned stormtrooper, an awakened stormtrooper as well. And that was pretty cool that they added even the other character in there. It was a Janna, right? Janna, I believe. Yeah. So I do love Finn's story. However, the shining star in this whole movie, and even for me now moving forward, is Rey. Yep. I've said it before. She is my favorite character in all of Star Wars.
I thought you were going to say
all of Star Wars.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say like BB-8 or something, but okay, let's go with Rey.
No, I think Rey is by far one of the ones that we can feel the most for. I feel like the thing with Luke in A New Hope, Luke is the most relatable for me in that movie, but the other two, not so much. And even so much, like, Luke becomes whiny at moments, and it's kind of hard to like him in those moments. But with Rey is the embodiment of love. She's doing this all for love. She's trying to find out who her parents are. She's got best friends that she wants to protect. Even the heartbreaking moment where she believes that she destroyed the ship that had Chewie in was such a heartbreaking moment, and she acted it so well.
Oh, you see that? Yeah, you see that with her interaction with the kids during the life celebration on the one planet.
Yeah.
Okay, and they actually focus on the baby kid aliens, and she was given a necklace which they use as a device to further the plot, just to humanize her and make her quite feminine, which is good, right? Because she's actually the leading actor or character, right, in a very powerful role.
And also, they give her the big burden of being the only Jedi and the one who has to restore balance to the galaxy and restart the Jedi.
And you can read so much stuff into that, right? She's the mother of the Jedi, right? Metaphorically, right? She's going to give birth to a new order, metaphorically. Yeah. Interesting.
But I do like that she has delicateness about her, but she is a strong character as well. So for me, this movie just solidified it even more that I love Rey, and she is my favorite. of all of Star Wars, to be honest. So I think she's just a wonderful character, and this movie definitely painted that light. Even her comedic moments are still funny, like, be with me, be with me. They're not with me, that sort of stuff.
Hey, did we get an answer yet? Does she have a boyfriend? Right? Okay. We've waited 3 movies. Come on.
I mean, she's married, right? She's a Skywalker.
What did you guys think about her taking on the Skywalker name, be it metaphorically or actually?
Let me go because I love this. I think names are important. I think connections are important. I don't particularly care about biology and genetics so much, right? That can be important in terms of health stuff and try to figure out who you are, but it's all about forming your own identity. That's key. And Rey really found her identity and latched onto it. She made the decision. She grew up, right? And it's a sign of maturity, and I love that.
You know what? I think everybody saw it coming a mile away. Everybody did. It wasn't one of those things where like, oh my God, I'm going to get spoiled. No, I think we all guessed that she was going to take this last name. I think it was, one, logistical. You're not going to be a Palpatine and people respect you in the universe. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, I know Adolf Hitler even had relatives as well, and they changed their name.
Yeah.
They are not the embodiment of evil. The name became evil because of one man. Palpatine was an evil name because of the one man. And so logistically, it makes sense. I would even argue that Kylo Ren's death, Ben's death, was necessary as well for that reason. He's not going to go around the galaxy apologizing to everybody.
Yeah.
So logistically, it makes sense. The execution of it was borderline hokey, but still beautiful in its own way. And something I foresaw, I personally loved it, though. I think it makes sense, and she's now taking on that name, and it's not who you are or the name that you were born with, but it's who you want to become and where you're going forward.
Yeah, and it's family. The Skywalkers were family, Luke and Leia. So it's more than just say Julius Caesar during like the Roman founding the Roman Empire during the
Right.
Roman Civil War, right? And then the next 20 emperors took the name Caesar. So it's not a political thing; it's a family connection thing.
Yeah.
That's how I was too. I had no problems with it. I would rather her be a Skywalker than nobody. At the end, or continue living as just Rey. Like, that's boring. I don't think that if/when we see more media, be it a movie or a book or a show or whatever, with Rey in the future, I don't think she's going to go around calling herself Rey Skywalker, or if she has like an academy or something, Master Skywalker. I don't think that's going to happen. I think it'll just be Master Rey or whatever. But I think it was less literal than a lot of people are thinking it is.
Yeah.
I think it's more something personal for her. Like, hey, you know what? I don't want to be a Palpatine. I'm rejecting that. I want to be like the people that brought me in and trained me. I want to be a Skywalker.
It was poetic in its own way.
Yes. Talking poetic, I just realized this. So the ending of the movie is Rey has already visited the old homestead, right? She buried the 2 lightsabers. And it's a fade-off shot with the 2 twin suns in the background with her and BB-8, right? It's like a ray of sunshine. I'm not sure if that's on purpose, but it works.
I'm sure that wasn't the point, Joel. That's pretty funny, though.
But it works. Okay.
By the way, Leia's saber is beautiful. It is a gorgeous saber. I would love that hilt. It's beautiful. I thought it was gorgeous. It's a little weird, though, that she buried it at a place that she has no attachment to. I know the symbolism behind it. I get it. It's just I thought that was a little interesting.
Yeah.
It's like.
Did you guys like that Leia had her own saber?
Oh, I loved it. Yes.
Yeah, I like it too.
I do wish it was another color aside from blue, but
me too.
I'll take it.
What were you gonna say, Joel?
Oh, I just thought the whole homestead, like, it's kind of like their family burial grounds, so to speak. If there's bodies, so it's like, yeah, I can see that. That's there's so
I
much.
think
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
I was going to say, I think a lot of people are missing the point with that. Like, it's not that Rey took the sabers back to Tatooine because it's where Luke is from. Or it's where there's a bunch of great memories. Like, Luke hated it there.
Yeah.
Leia was not, like, never visited, but the time she was there, she definitely didn't like it. Like, it wasn't buried there because it's Luke's home. It's where Owen and Beru were, and it's where they died. It's where now that this is where Anakin's mom is buried too, right? Like, I'm not I'm not misremembering that. It's where she's buried. I mean, if it's not like Luke and Leia have a body, so bury them with the rest of their family. It's like a cemetery.
And see, for me though, I think the symbolism of it was more for us fans.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it was more of, hey, this truly is the end of the Skywalker saga. While yes, Rey, she does decide to come back, or they decide to write some stories about Rey, she'll still have the name, but however, nothing will be directly tied to the Skywalkers in that sense, where Palpatine and Vader, all that stuff would come up again. But that was more of a sense, like, and it was like us watching the burial of that story and us letting go.
Yeah.
And so for me, that's where the poetic word comes from. And I thought it was just a beautiful moment.
Yep.
Yeah. So let's talk about something else. The big bad of this, or at least was supposed to be, but then ended up being redeemed, which, by the way, was something I did not want to happen, but it ended up being something I really, really liked. Kylo Ren going back to becoming Ben. And it was interesting to see Ben not have a line other than ouch, but they redeemed him. And I wanted to see what you guys thought about that plot line.
Do you want to take this one, Chris, first, or shall I?
I will gladly take this one.
Go for it, man.
I love the plot line, and I love the execution. Personally, Ernie, you mentioned how he has one line, which is "ow." I don't agree with that. I think that Kylo Ren dies when Rey stabs him.
Right.
And I think his conversation after he's healed and with Han, I think that's totally Ben Solo. I do not think that that's Kylo.
See, I thought it was Ben Solo when he throws the saber.
Yeah,
into the
I don't. Nope. He's already been. He has already been before that. Like, that's why I'm curious to read the book, is because I want to see how that author interprets it and how close it is to what I view it as. And even if it's not right, I'm still going to view it as that. Like, he has, like, that whole conversation with his father is Ben talking. It's not Kylo.
Yeah.
We know what Kylo would have done. Kylo would have stabbed his ghost father again. Ben wouldn't have done that. I loved his arc and his redemption. I am a little bit sad at the ending. I've heard that they've played around with that a little bit. I don't know how I feel about the kiss. Like, okay, whatever. I think it was more of an in the moment type thing rather than romantic feelings. I think it was fine. Like, the execution at the very end was not what I would have done, but the overall, like, I can say I'm pleased with it. I'd rather him be redeemed than just like end up being the big bad of the movie, which is what I think they were trying to do with Last Jedi, and then just have Rey kill him or something like that.
My take is, I think more big picture stuff is that anyone can be redeemed. It doesn't matter how heinous a person you are, and the heinous things you've done. Even Kylo Ren can be redeemed, and it's not dependent on what people think of him. It doesn't matter what you, me, Chris thinks of Kylo Ren. Can he be redeemed or not? The fact is, he's been redeemed, right? Either by himself, like through his own actions, or through the Force, or through something else like that. And I think that's a very powerful message. And of course, we're bordering on some religious stuff, but this is Star Wars, and they raid a lot of things from organized religion and faiths out there, and I can see that. And it's a hard lesson to learn. So I thought it was good.
So originally, I didn't, like I said, I didn't want him to be redeemed. I really like the idea of having somebody like Kylo Ren be in charge because he was unstable, he was incredibly emotional, and he was power hungry. Not only that, he's been bested by Rey a few times, so he was like gunning for her. I really like that idea. However, in the Rise of Skywalker, we do see that moment when he is talking. Well, he got stabbed, he got bested by Rey in a moment of anger, of course, from Rey. But you know what? And the interruption by our beloved princess. I thought it was a beautiful cacophony of just moments and emotions, like just crashing into that literally a wave crashing into that scene. Um, but what they actually did with this character is not out of line with Star Wars. Vader himself was redeemed. I do feel like we got to see a little bit more out of Kylo than we did with Anakin and his power, you know. Um, and I do love that he was redeemed by having a memory of his dad, and that was a complete shock. I'm glad that wasn't spoiled for me because I immediately got emotional when I saw Han Solo again, and it was such a cool moment that they had the same exact conversation they had right before Kylo decided to kill his own father. I like that it was that same moment. It was a mirror moment in the universe where he had to decide whether or not he actually is going to kill Ben off or become 100% Kylo. And that was just such a great moment. And then it was cool to see Ben as a Jedi. Like the whole moment where he pulls the lightsaber out of his back, does the like curtsy bell thing. That was great. And now I will say, especially being somebody who's married with a kid, I don't think that kiss felt well. Maybe the execution of it felt a little forced, but I don't necessarily feel like, at least story wise, that it was forced. There are moments where you have a connection with somebody, and that connection really does drive some emotion where you do want to be intimate with the person. And that's the way I view that moment. They had a forced connection that nobody understood. Yes, Snoke may have planted it there, but they were connected. They saw each other's thoughts. They fought each other at different places and were in the same room together. They knew what it felt to be the other person or feel the other person's emotions. And so for me, that kiss, while a little weird, made sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a neat riff off the whole star-crossed lover routine, right, from Romeo and Juliet. In this case, you have two rival houses, the Palpatines and Skywalkers, but you don't know who's who, right? And yeah, it's a nice, I don't know, evolution or progression on that theme.
Yeah. And by the way, I've got to say, Adam Driver, props to him. He was great in this movie.
Oh.
His acting was phenomenal, especially not having any lines and being able to deliver the emotion he needed to deliver just with smiles, just with the painful looks in his face when he's coming out of the rock and like limping. Yeah, it was pretty sad to see him die, but as we know, as fans of this franchise, that he went and he is now one with the Force, which is another poetic, beautiful moment,
Yeah.
So I personally like the redeeming. I didn't want it, but I accepted it. I loved it, and the way it was executed worked for me. So
I will say that it's a little bittersweet because Adam Driver's to the point now where we're probably not going to get him in another Star Wars thing unless it's some big giant event movie. I just don't think it's going to happen unless they've already said, "Hey, we're going to kill your character, but we want you to sign on for another movie or something like that." But I don't know. That's probably the only sad thing about it in terms of watching his character go. There were moments where I'm like, man, that is definitely a Solo.
Yeah,
He is Han's child, especially that finger point that he does on the bridge to, I don't remember who it was, one of his officers. The finger point, it gets me every time.
Hux.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was to Hux, so he's like,
Yep.
Let's talk about some of the minor characters here. I am blanking out. Was it General Pride? Was that his last
Yes.
name? Yeah. I thought he was an intriguing character. I wish we knew more about him because his look was just intimidating, all as heck. I don't like that Rose was treated the way that she was. She was pushed aside. I think she would have been great as part of the adventure with the main three. I wish they would have really done more with her character. I'm glad, even for like BB-8, that he wasn't the prequel R2-D2 where it's all CGI and doing insane, crazy things. I'm glad they went back to that. Yeah. So I don't know. You guys have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think the biggest scene, which I really enjoyed, because I've hated this character for almost all 9 movies, and I think this last one, the one scene might have just redeemed that for me. Is of course C-3PO.
Yep.
Oh, Joel.
Okay.
No,
Joel, we are no longer friends.
Okay. My God, he was the Jar Jar Binks of the original series. Okay.
Oh, I loved the way it was in this movie.
Yeah.
It was a great send off for Anthony Daniels, but also a great send off for the character. Assuming that we don't see him again. Like, if they want to make another trilogy after this, we have rumors about where the next or the future of Star Wars movies are. But I mean, if they want to make it something else, and Anthony Daniels is still around and wants to do it, like, more power to it.
Oh, yeah.
I think he was great. Rose, like I said earlier, it was a shame that she was not utilized more.
Yeah.
Jana was, okay, I guess. We don't really know much about her, which we haven't talked about Lando yet. I guess he's sort of a side character. I loved Billy D. Williams in this. He actually surprised me probably the most because he was the one I was worried about, how he would be portrayed and how he would act as Lando, but he nailed it after all these years.
Yeah.
BB-8, you can't go wrong with BB-8. I liked Dio.
I like Dio too.
He was very funny at his comedic moments. That's another thing that really I loved about this movie compared to Last Jedi is the comedy. It felt natural. It didn't feel like they were writing a joke. It felt like something maybe that would actually happen, what the characters would actually do. Like whenever they're at this right before they go to the festival, and they're looking sort of at 3PO, and like all the characters sort of one by one turn towards him. He's just like, "What are we looking at?" and turns behind him. Oh, that's so funny. That gets me that is so C-3PO.
Yeah,
but
and there's other characters as well. It's like a Zordy Bliss character played by Carrie Russ. She was interesting.
I liked her.
Babu Frick.
Did we forget about Baba Frick?
Yeah.
Baba Frick. Okay.
Babu Frick. Oh, what did you guys think of him? Everybody's going crazy about him.
The best addition to Star Wars ever. Best character.
Oh God. He was a small addition.
I wish I could do the voice, but
Droid go black. That was hilarious. He was so funny, and I like that he had kind of this somewhat Italian accent. He was like a greaseball. It was awesome. I'm glad you brought up Lando because there's so much in this movie to talk about that like you just forget the certain things. But yeah, Lando still had it. Billy D. Williams still had it. He still had the charm that he brought to the character, and just that moment when he said, "Give her my love," it was so Lando. But he was fun. I was worried about how they were going to handle him in this story. So I'm glad he was still a side character, but enough to where he made an impact in the movie, and he wasn't just there for the last scene. Now, you know how you can tell that you're the only real Star Wars fan in a movie is when you cheer when Wedge is on screen.
Yes.
yes.
I was the only one that went crazy in the theater.
Wow.
No, like nobody knew who he was, and I was like, "That's Wedge." I was so happy about that.
Yeah, sorry about your nephew, but still okay.
The idea of Dio was such a good idea too. I do like that he was the idea of an abused droid added so much depth to Star Wars in itself, and as far as droids go and character building. And interesting fact, that's J.J. Abrams' voice. But the fact that he was an abused character, and some people even have gone to like he almost represents autistic kids. He was a fun little droid to see, especially when he did the squeaky wheel thing and he started going around in circles. It was just a joy to see him, move around. But yeah, I do wish Rose would have been handled a little bit differently. Jana was okay. Zori Bliss was really intriguing and did the best that she did with what she was given as well. Kerry Russell, of course, I'm talking about. So yeah, those were the ones that stood out to me. So I don't know. Closing thoughts, guys. Joel, what did you think moving forward? You feel at least that this chapter is closed?
It is. And I've said this on other podcasts before, and this podcast is that I think the future of Star Wars is on television and streaming services like Disney Plus. I really enjoy the non-Force stuff for the most part, right? I like the gritty realism of Star Wars. I like the Westerns. I like the space opera. I like the Flash Gordon's type. But that's just me. And I think Star Wars is a huge universe. And in a couple more years, when we get some more Star Wars films on the big screen, it's just going to entice a next generation of fans. And that's the power of Star Wars. That's why I'm a fan.
Chris?
Yeah, I'm with you, Joel. I do think that the future of Star Wars is on TV or streaming or however you want to look at it. They will never stop making Star Wars movies as long as Disney has control over it. But I hope that they've learned their lesson from this trilogy of movies and sort of make some events rather than something that feels like it has to happen. In hindsight, I mean, if I could go back and talk to Kathleen Kennedy in 2012 when they were deciding what to do after Disney had purchased Lucasfilm, they'd be like, hey, put some stuff on TV, put out some like big books, like make things events. Don't worry about the sequel trilogy yet. Go like put it out for like 2016 or 2017 and just build some stuff to get us hyped up for it, and then make it this big, massive event. Which we'll see. We still have Project Luminous looming out there, so we'll see what that is going to be. Hopefully, the rumors that it's going to be something High Republic turns out to be true. But I'm glad that we're putting this era behind us because it's done a lot of good for Star Wars, but it's hard to say that it hasn't done a lot of bad too.
Yeah.
And I hope that and I think The Mandalorian is a good starting point to sort of unite Star Wars fans again, and help people view it in a different light. And I think that eventually we'll have that to all look forward to as the next Star Wars streaming series rather than the next Star Wars movie.
Hey, Chris, you don't have to worry. This is the final order anyways.
Oh, God.
Order number 66, please. Order number 66. The Star Wars trilogy is always going to be something that is so meaningful to me in my life. It saved me from seeing some bad things in my life. It kind of protected my imagination, so to speak. Star Wars had always been my escape, and so even with the new trilogy, even with the prequels, I love this franchise. I'm always going to love it. I do agree with you guys. TV is the way to go. I almost kind of want to see something like Firefly done, though, where the TV series goes on and then they kind of end it with a Big Bang movie. That would be beautiful. What was the movie? Serenity, I believe?
Yeah.
That movie's great.
Yeah.
That movie's great. And that's the way to do it, I think. If they want to go with the movie route, do it that way. Because I like the idea of an old republic or something set in the old times as a TV series. I'd love to see that because you can flesh out more stories. And it's something that we brought up on the last episode as well. But overall, I do feel like I got to say bye to the Skywalkers. And I I'm looking forward to the future of Star Wars, and I hope that it is treated a bit differently. I do hope that they've learned their mistakes and, consider everything before moving forward, and it not being a financial decision, but more of a let's tell a great story decision. Sure, yeah, you can sell your figures with it, but do where it is most important, and that is in the story, because that's what we want to see as fans. And so, with that, I'd like to say a big thanks to you guys for joining me tonight and letting me spew out the emotions that is this beautiful movie known as Star Wars. And I'm glad you guys were there to share your thoughts with me as well, and disagree with Chris as well. That's awesome. So,
I just want to go see the movie again.
Yeah, I totally do. I saw it the third time. I think that's good enough for me. But yeah, go see it again. Make it some more money. So, all right. Well, guys, that's going to do it for today. We do hope you enjoy this episode. We do have more content coming up. I'm going to throw in some unique episodes here and there as well. We also have the Clone Wars. I'm still trying to figure out a lineup for host on that one. It may be just us. Who knows? But yeah, we got some more content coming for you guys as well. So go follow us on our Twitter. It is Mando Night Pod, Pod. And Joel, where can we find you?
I'm on Twitter at Joel_Welch, WELCH.
And then plug your show as well.
Oh, right. I do a little quirky sci-fi geek show called the Sci-Fi Pubcast with some other folks, Kerry Simpson and Derek Beebe, and whoever I can rope in to come visit the bar, because we're more of a community podcast. So if you're trying to break into podcasting, or you just want to check it out and try it for the first time, yeah, and you have something passionate to say about science fiction or them of some type, yeah, message us, because we do our best with sound quality, but the most important thing is to have a voice, and that's what we care about. That's important to us.
All right, Chris.
I'm on Twitter at The Curse of Chris.
And what's the other show you do, Chris?
I do Crash Couch, which is a podcast about the Amazon, formerly Sci-Fi TV show The Expanse, which I still need to finish watching.
That sounds like a great podcast. So who's on that?
All these bunch of nerds, bunch of weirdos.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
actually, Joel. this season we've had less Ernie than I would have liked.
Oh, I'm coming back. Don't worry, buddy. I'm coming back.
Yeah.
I have some fun things to say about this series. So
there you go.
Go check us out on the Crash Couch. Ironically, us three are on it. So.
Yes.
And my name is Ernie. You can catch me on Instagram or Twitter at YourBuddyErnie. And I do have my show coming back at the beginning of February. So I'm pretty excited about that, Talking Earnestly. Go follow my Twitter as well for that show. It's just at Talking Earnestly. But yeah, thanks so much, guys. And may the Force be with you.